everyone, and welcome back to Crime Beat Conversations. I'm your host, Rafaela Lipschitz, and today I'm joined by Jeffsky Poincy. Jeffsky is a program manager at Partners Global and has years of experience in economic and policy development in Haiti, where he's worked in both the public and private sectors. And today I'm very excited to be talking about what the landscape in Haiti looks like, what these new peacekeeping missions are looking like and how they've evolved and changed, and what we can do about it. Thank you so much for joining me, Jeffsky.
Thank you, Rafaela. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you. So I was wondering, can we start with just you giving us a broad picture of what the situation looks like in Haiti right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would start by saying that Haiti is going through one of the worst crises of its history, probably the biggest crisis in my lifetime. And it's three crises laid up on top of each other, right? First, there is a governance crisis, and I think it started with that. After the assassination of former President Jovenel Moise, that created a governance vacuum in the country. At the time, there wasn't a functioning parliament because the term expired. The judiciary was also dysfunctional at the time, and with the assassination of the president, it left the executive branch dysfunctional as well. So we've had elections in Haiti since 2017, and as of right now, there's not a single elected officials in Haiti. The country is run by a transitional presidential council, and it's affect the entire governance of the country. The government has lost control over a large majority of the territory. The major government infrastructure have also ceased to function. Some of them are under control of the gangs. So the governance issue is really the source of it. And of course, there's the security aspect of it, which is very critical right now because the majority of the metropolitan area of Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti, 80 to 90% is estimated to be under the control of the gangs. So the major infrastructure, the ports, on all that, they're all under the control of the gangs. And of course, the gangs have been taking advantage of this governance vacuum to expand the territory, to expand the influence. And all of the metrics when it comes to insecurity in Haiti is like, exponentially, it's a very bad situation. We have a lot of killings every day, a lot of kidnappings. We have a huge humanitarian crisis with over 10% of the population being displaced, and the vast majority of them are children, women, and people that are very, very, very vulnerable. So those are like those three kind of like combined crises. I would say that are feeding each other. They're very kind of like intertwined. You have the gangs that are taking advantage of the governance vacuum, and this is being reflected in everything in the country from an economic perspective, from the humanitarian perspective, and as well as from the social perspective.
In these gang-run territories, whether it's Port-au-Prince or beyond, what does that gang control look like? Are they governing? Is there any sort of service provision or anything like that? How do these territories work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think talking about the gang issue in Haiti, we have to try to understand the context a little bit. So right now there's about 200 armed groups. We call them gangs, but from my perspective, I don't think they I don't think they're gangs, like street gangs as we know it. I think they're criminal networks, criminal groups, and they've overtaken up to 80% of the metropolitan area. As I mentioned earlier, they have access they have control over the key infrastructure, the access to the ports, the access to the main roads, that are considered to be the lifeline of the economy, and the control is, I would say, violence led. They are well embedded in the community. They're well embedded in the community. Sometimes, in the absence of the government, they still provide some, I would say, some basic services They try to enforce law by violence in the community. And one of the tools that they use is actually the displacement. So they force displacement, making people flee the neighborhood so they could have access to key infrastructure, so they could expand the territorial reach. So it's like that. And the gang issue in Haiti in general is inherently linked to politics, right? So if you look at a map, you realize that where the gangs are concentrated are the major urban hubs with a lot of people, which make them very strategic from from an electoral perspective. So it's give them a lot of leverage, to deal with politicians, and also because they control the major infrastructure, the major roads of the country, it creates a relationship as well with the private sector that sometimes would sponsor them just so they could have access to to the infrastructures and so on.
And we've recently seen a shift sort of in the international community's response. Initially there was this Kenyan led peacekeeping mission, the MSS, and we've recently seen that transition into what is now called a gang suppression force. What is your assessment of this new force? Do you think it's better positioned to fight these gangs and these different networks than the previous one?
Well, so the MSS, which is known as the Kenyan mission, was set to expire after, like, the mandate was set to expire in October of this year. So it was I think it was the UN Security Council had to do something about it, and I think they seized this opportunity to address what they think are some of the shortcomings of the Kenyan missions. And the way this gang suppression force differs with the Kenyan mission is, one, it's large. It's a little bit larger in scope because the MSS was intended to have over 200, over 2,000 troops, police, and so. But for this force, it's about 5,000. So they kind of like increase the scope. And the other thing that they did was to address the issue that the Kenyan have had on the ground when it comes to the collaboration with the police, right? So in the MSS mandate, it was very clear that they would go in support to the police. But in this within this new framework for the gang suppression force, they give them the authority to act, to basically sidelining the police and act independently from the police. And this is like a way to kind of like bypass the police in itself, which I think is a major problem. So basically, the new gang suppression force had, I would say, more on paper. They have more direct action capability, and they have some kind of like standalone, capacity as well. But I don't think it addresses the core issue, because what we've seen in the Kenyan mission in the design of it, it's led by voluntary countries, right? If you want to send forces, okay. If you want to give money as well, so that creates a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the who's gonna fund the mission, and then people are just waiting and wait. Who's gonna bring money so I know what to bring, or who's gonna send forces so I know if I should send forces as well. So this issue remains the same, because with this new gang suppression force is the same mechanism. The only difference is that with this new force, there is a UN mission that kind of like will be taking care of the of most of the logistics, like the support and in terms of logistics and so on, which is also one of the shortcomings of the Kenyan mission, because there wasn't this like UN participation in that. So they really try to address that. But broadly speaking about those two missions, they fit into a pattern of outsourcing security for Haiti. So it's like a knee-jerk reaction for the international community. Whenever there's a security crisis in Haiti, they would resort to foreign forces rather than empowering or rather than bolstering the capacity of the Haitian forces, whether it's the police or the army, and so on. And I think that's the real question, right? Because what we've seen I mean, for the past 30 years, Haiti has experiencing a lot of UN-led missions, and one of them lasted more than 13 years, from 2004 till 2017. They left Haiti after 13 years and were still in this situation. That was an indicator that it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. So the priority should be to support the Haitian police and to make sure that they have the capacity to address the security issues. So that's broadly what I think of the mission, but also there is the question of addressing the security issue the way that we've been doing it, whether it works or not. And I think it doesn't work. And one of the reasons is the fact that the gang issue is a multidimensional issue. Of course, there is the gang that are at the forefront, but also there's an entire ecosystem that fuel the gang, that enable the gangs to reach this capacity where they can challenge the police, where they can challenge any type of forces. So there's little focus on that aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just to say that no matter how big of a force you send to Haiti to address the gangs, it will never eradicate the problem at its roots. And we've seen that after the last UN mission, after 13 years, they left Haiti. They, of course, over the course of this mission, a lot of gangs members were imprisoned, a lot of them were killed. But after 13 years, they reemerged in the same localities with virtually the same capacity, right? It's then indicated that it's not about the gangs, because whether you kill them, you replace them, there's always an entire ecosystem that fuel this problem, and other gang members reemerge.
I want to pull on that a little bit more around the ecosystem behind the gangs and the things that are enabling them to sort of stay in power and keep this control. Are we seeing any transnational aspect of the gangs that have control of the territory in Haiti? Are they collaborating or getting support from other criminal networks in the region?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been proven again and again. And when we talk about the ecosystem, I see three aspects. Right? The first one is the link between the gangs and the politics. As I mentioned earlier, the gangs are inherently a political phenomenon because of the leverage that they have, because of the fact that they are located in very, very strategic um, localities when it comes to elections. So gang over the course of Haitian history, gangs have been created by the politicians, instrumentalized by politicians, sponsored by politicians, and so on. So that gives them I would say, like you know, they're well embedded into politics. That's one of the aspect of this ecosystem. The other one is the relationship with the private sectors, whether it's a coerced relationship or whether it's just like a relationship. So that's also a big enabler of the gang, because they collaborate with the private sectors, and some of their funding come from the activities with the private sector. But the transnational aspect of it is the fact that Haiti has been long considered to be a transshipment hub for drug trafficking and other sort of illicit goods. And if you look at a map, you see Haiti. It's right in the middle between Central and South America and to North America. So yes, the relationship between the gangs and the criminal networks in the region is real. And Haiti has this governance vacuum right now that makes it very, fragile. That makes it very vulnerable to that, to trafficking. And just if you look at Haiti in general, it's over 1,000 miles of coastline, which is not guarded at all. There's no such thing as a coast guard in Haiti. There's probably 100, 100 and 100 officers within the Coast Guard. So with little capacity to kind of like, monitor the coast. And there's also the border with Dominican Republic. It's over 200 and 250 miles with a lot of informal crossing points along the way. So Haiti is very vulnerable to drug trafficking, and the governance issue, of course, that doesn't help. So this is a huge factor. And there's also the arm trafficking. So 80% of the, according to the, some of the reports, UN reports, 80% of the guns and ammunition that the gangs are using actually they come from the US. And there's an entire, I would say, there's an entire drug arms trade between Jamaica and Haiti. It's created an entire, I would say, an entire hub in the middle of the Caribbean, dealing with drug trafficking, dealing with arms and other illicit goods. So that's definitely a big factor that kind of like enable the gangs and give them the capacity to outgun the police.
Mm. There's also been quite a lot of attention paid to the role of private security forces in Haiti and in this fight. And you mentioned earlier the notion of outsourcing security rather than ramping up capacity within Haiti itself, whether it's the police force or the military, things like that. What do you see the role of these private security forces as being?
Yeah, so it's a fact that even though the government was very reluctant to admit that they've hired private mercenaries to go to Haiti, but I think it's hard to tell because I know for a fact some private entities have hired mercenaries to protect the businesses, and there's probably nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to the government, then there's a few things that we should look at. It's the first is the aspect of accountability, right? So across the globe, mercenaries have been known to violate basic human laws or to indiscriminately bombing or killing people. So there is this aspect of accountability that is not clear in the relationship between those private mercenaries and the government. There's not a lot of transparency in there at all. Um, I know for a fact that there have been some movement, some operation going on in Haiti, and rumors or the people are saying that it's private mercenaries, especially in using the drones. And actually, a few weeks ago, there was a drone that killed probably like I think or 8 or 10 children in a neighborhood in Port-au-Prince, and so far there's no one has been held accountable. So just to emphasize on this accountability issue, but also it creates a very complicated situation when it comes to the security landscape. It's become fragmented, right? So when there's a gang operation, you don't know whether it's the police, you don't know if it's a mercenary that operate, under the prime minister direction. They're not embedded in the police, right? So it creates a very fragmented landscape where you kind of like don't know how to coordinate all that, and it's not well integrated, which I think won't serve any purpose. And my last point is, again, going back to the fact that attacking the gangs or killing the gangs is not going to resolve the situation, right? So it has to be accompanied by other measures. There has to be measures to address the transnational aspect of it. There has to be measures to also break the linkage between the gang and the politicians, the gang with the private sectors, the source of weapons and ammunition. That has to we have to find mechanisms to cut this linkage, to kind of like make sure that the ecosystem is not fueling the gangs the way it is right now.
Mm. Well, Jeffsky, thank you so much for joining me today and discussing this important topic that I think doesn't get nearly enough attention from the US and the international community in general. And thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of Crime Bee Conversations. Please be sure to check out our other work and stay tuned for more work from the Mafiocracies Project on Haiti and beyond. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.